hearty welcome to one and all. This is episode 146 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for joining me on this Eclipse Day, Monday in New York. But if you're checking out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch episode 146 on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, turn on those notifications. So today is, and the eclipse has just completed, if that's the proper phrasing. I've always been fascinated by space, by the movement of the sun and the moon and the stars. One of my most unfortunate and searing childhood memories, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of Generation Xers remember this, is when we were kids, we often looked up at the sky, asking the big questions. What's really out there? Does this have anything to do with God? The afterlife? What are we doing here? Well, at least me, age 6, this was the kind of shit that I used to do. Maybe I was a little weird, but I don't think it's so unusual to look up and wonder and imagine. And part of that looking up was a curiosity, an interest in learning about space travel, flying among the stars, wondering what it would be like to be up in what amounted to a very high functioning tuna can in outer space. And the searing memory, one of the searing memories of my youth, I was 12, and we had spent a lot of time in school learning about the space shuttle Challenger, which was going to go up sometime in January of 1986. I was in 6th grade, good old Fairfield Elementary, a red brick school in Massapequa, New York. And one of the teachers in that school, I'm not sure which grade that she taught, but there had been this huge, again, decades before the internet. Well, no, about 1 decade before the internet. It seems like longer. 1986 still feels like the Stone Ages. But there was a teacher at Fairfield, at least one. It could have been more. Maybe she was just the only one that mentioned it. But there had been some kind of a contest where teachers across the country would submit a proposal as to why they should be the first teacher in space that should get trained with NASA astronauts to go up into space. And the woman who ended up being selected, I think she was from Massachusetts, pretty sure she was from the East Coast. Her name was Krista McAuliffe. And there was a lot of chatter, and I don't remember very much in the way of negative talk, but people were really excited. And this, for me, as somebody who was fascinated by space as a concept, fascinated by the sun and the moon and the stars as conceptual things, beings, objects. I don't know what my little boy thought process was. I just knew that I was interested. And we did learn about astronomy as kids, writing papers about the moons and the Earth's gravitational pull, and this is how close you could get to the sun, and then if you're this close, you become a raisin, but if you're that close, you're vaporized, but if you're over here, you would just feel very hot. It's just all this kind of nonsense, but I was fascinated by it all. And I loved the idea of space exploration. And I can remember long before the Challenger went up, and I want to say the date was January 28th, 1986. It was either 27th or 28th. But I remember when the movie The Right Stuff premiered on HBO, I remember watching it. And I remember even earlier, 2001, A Space Odyssey, which is very kind of high-minded literary sci-fi, and making us question what we're looking at every time we turn our eyes to the sky and to the stars. I didn't really understand 2001: A Space Odyssey. It didn't help me to gain a greater understanding of what happens when we look up. And certainly, I don't recall, I don't remember there being any solar eclipses when I was a kid. There probably were, but I don't remember. At least not here in New York. I don't remember. But I do remember seeing The Right Stuff, being fascinated. I was a little bit older when HBO began running The Right Stuff all the time. It was a movie from 83. So in the years of 84, 85, HBO and Cinemax, it was a PG rated movie. Great movie, got a ton of acclaim, didn't win Best Picture somehow, terms of endearment. I'm good. Forget it. I didn't even want to get into it. I mean, I like that movie, but give me a break. Over the Right Stuff. But I was always intrigued, if not always fascinated by that. And how insignificant, even as a kid, before somebody was telling me and asking and throwing big questions at me, we're just a spoke on the wheel. We're just so insignificant in the larger picture. There are billions and billions of stars. There are infinite galaxies out there somewhere. I remember the day of the Challenger going up. And I guess I always had a certain fear of that, of space travel, of what could happen when you get out of Earth's atmosphere. We had kind of learned enough about these things to know there was a danger, even though I don't think that we were taught about the missions that failed and the number of NASA astronauts who died horrible deaths from Grissom on down. Just horrendous. But there was a sense of excitement that this teacher was going to go into space. And the idea was, I mean, it's kind of weird, but that she was going to teach a lesson while they were in orbit. On Apollo 13, and it's an amazing sequence in the movie before the mission unfortunately goes haywire, where they're in space, they're en route to the moon, literally, and Tom Hanks as Jim Lovell, and Bill Paxton as Fred Hayes, and Kevin Bacon as Jack Swigert are interacting. Well, they think they're interacting with everyone on Earth who has, a TV tuned to Channel 7 or whatever it might be, when in fact, they're really only getting broadcast to Mission Control. Major networks drop them because, well, space travel's not a big deal anymore. And then obviously, when things go haywire, suddenly it's a very big deal, and now everybody's interested because now, well, people might die. Now we want to see it. But the day of the Challenger explosion, if memory serves, it was a warmer than usual day in New York. And we were sixth grade class. We were outside at recess. I don't know what the hell we were playing, but we were outside at recess when the launch was going to take place. And similar to another terrible tragedy, totally different kind of tragedy, but a tragedy which occurred about not quite 5.5, a little over 5 years prior. We came back into the building after recess, and the teachers did not look right. In particular, the one instructor, the magnet instructor, Mrs. Smith, was crying. And it didn't click immediately. There had been an accident. The astronauts are all gone. And even as a 12-year-old boy, I understood the weight of what I had just been told. When John Lennon had been assassinated when I was in first grade 5 years prior, and I got to school that day, and the teachers mostly were crying, and it was explained to me, I felt bad, but I didn't feel the weight of what the adults were telling me. By age 12, I got it. And this was unspeakable levels of terrible tragedy. I guess I was finally mature enough at age 12 to understand why they're crying. why this is so bad. And so in the Stone Ages, we went into one of the Fairfield resource rooms. Like, they had VHS players, and they had TVs. Nothing fancy. Everything was like analog level stuff where it all had to be plugged in. But rather than go back to class, magnet for us that day, we watched the news broadcast of what had just happened, and they kept replaying it. And it would be surreal now, but it was even more surreal as a kid. The images of watching Krista McAuliffe's parents literally see her die in real time. I don't know why that they were broadcasting that. I feel like they almost should have blotted that out or not shown that. Just maybe shown the shuttle blow up. I mean, I don't even know. See, this is the sort of stuff that I'm not sure that there is a correct answer or a correct process. But I remember feeling horrendous, and then feeling horrendous on top of that we even saw this. It felt wrong that we were watching this. But on the other hand, you say, well, they just should have told you what happened and never shown what the actual footage of what took place. I don't know. I just felt sick, literally sick to my stomach after seeing it. It was so terrible. And I remember thinking to myself, maybe we shouldn't go into space anymore, because there sure as fuck seems to be a high percentage of tragedies. Maybe we're supposed to leave the stars alone. But that's not really the right idea either. But I feel as if people from my generation, there were these touchstone moments. And obviously younger people under 40, could not possibly have any memories of this particular terrible celestial event. But for Gen Xers, Lennon's assassination, Challenger, and there were other terrible events, but in between the Challenger disaster and the horrible uneasiness and the terrible feelings of displacement, I mean, 9/11 was 15 and a half years later. These are the images burned into our consciousness. Like my father and my mother and many of the sort of elder boomers and members of the greatest generation, for them it was the Kennedy assassination. Moments forever etched in memory and time. And it's strange because I've always loved movies about space exploration. And I've loved movies about achievement, fighting against the atmosphere. You know, Apollo 13, the idea of there's going to be such intense heat as the astronauts and their tiny little flying object are trying to get back inside of the Earth's atmosphere. It's not something that you can see. And if the heat shield doesn't hold, our brave astronauts are going to literally burn to death on an unbelievably, humongously, massively lesser scale. We've been told, and I remember the 2017 Eclipse, I don't think that it was as direct of a hit over here as it is, or as it was today. But we were told it's prolonged exposure. If you just look up at it without special glasses, you could permanently damage your eyes. This is another kind of reminder of what we're dealing with, that there are forces, there are powers in this atmosphere within our eye line that can barely be comprehended, even if we understand them scientifically. When you think of that, when you think of the concept of something 93 million miles away, that if we look up at, it doesn't appear to be hurting us. Because I remember, like any other kid, looking up at the sun and my mother saying, don't do that. You might hurt your eyes. And to tell you the truth, a couple of seconds of looking directly at the sun, it hurt my eyes. There's so much in the galaxy that is extraordinary and can scarcely be explained. that when you have something like today, like a full eclipse, you take note. And I'm not cynical about this. The powers in the universe, the mystical nature of it all. It's fascinating. And I am glad that in this very cynical, often negative and depressing and angry time, that people still got their glasses and looked up. And lo and behold, on social media, it's mostly people reporting positive, saying positive things, not dragging Usher for sucking at the Super Bowl, or I don't want to see Taylor Swift anymore, or whatever it might be. This is an event that actually, I hate to say brought people together, but most people talking about it are saying, wow, that was fucking cool. Holy shit. They said it was going to be, but I didn't really think that it was going to be. We all have these memories, and they're not all the same for everybody. It depends on kind of where you were and who you were when these touchstone events took place. If you weren't, I hate to say this, but if you weren't a big music fan, if you didn't see John Lennon as even the slightest bit of an important figure, when he was assassinated, yes, you may have said, it's terrible, but it didn't burn in the memory the way JFK, even people who hated JFK, well, I never would have voted for that guy, but you remember it. And there were some people when Lennon was assassinated who just had a normal reaction like, it's unfortunate. The same reaction when John Belushi, who was so young at the time, OD'd and passed. It's bad. It's not good. We're not happy that he's gone, but it's not as big of a deal. Then there are the events that just hit. And I remember watching that documentary, really good documentary. It was a 3-parter on Netflix a number of years ago called Challenger Final Flight. And even though it was painful, just from the perspective of, well, now we can analytically go through all of this and see, okay, this person seemed to do something wrong, but he didn't. His hand was forced. And you get into all the kind of political mechanics of what went wrong with the disaster. But it was painful and it hurt. And to see the different people who were at the launch all these years later, the actor Peter Billingsley, of all people, was part of like the NASA Young Astronauts program. He wanted to be an astronaut. He was not going to be an actor. He was going to train to be an astronaut, and that was gone. But he was there that day. He was right there. He was about 30 feet from Krista McAuliffe's parents. And watching that documentary brought back all of these terrible memories of that day, and even of us cynical 12-year-old Gen Xers making jokes about everything and not taking things seriously. We were all leveled by that. It's nice to have an event like today where people have a positive uptick or uptake where, yeah, this is good. No tragedy today. And I hope that nobody damaged. I'm sure there are going to be a few, but hopefully nobody injured themselves too badly by looking directly at it. Because I remember a lot of jokes in 2017, and I knew a few people. Yeah, I looked at it. I think I hurt my eyes. Hopefully nobody will on Facebook say, oh my God, I need eye surgery. I'm fucked up. I screwed or something. Hopefully not. But like many, always been fascinated looking up. And ironically, that movie, the farce, the sort of satire, Don't Look Up, it wasn't for the exact same reason. But we always want to look up because it's in our nature to be curious and to want to see whatever that might be. We enjoy looking. And I guess that's about it. You know, this was a good day. It's a good day for science. They predicted the eclipse, and it happened exactly at the time they said it was going to happen. It lasted for there was nothing, oh yeah, they were off by hours. It only was 3 seconds, whatever. No, they pretty much, the barometers were right on the numbers, right on the button here. And I think that I'll probably do episodes on the movies about space travel that really impacted me in greater detail another time. But it's like I can't look up and not think of the trailblazers who didn't just look up, but who went up to explore, to learn, to broaden everyone's horizons, to achieve, to go to the moon. Still so crazy, right? To orbit the Earth. Even that seems insane. And I remember watching the movie The Right Stuff, and that was really the first, can we get out of the Earth's atmosphere? So many things that are mind-blowing. It's really something. The eclipse, a naturally occurring phenomenon. Extraordinary. Today is April 8th, 2024, and decades hence, when many of us are gone, there are going to be young people asking their elders, do you remember that? And we're going to say, yeah, we had these special glasses so we didn't hurt our eyes. Really? Yeah. April 8th, 2024, here in New York. And with that, we've reached the end of episode 146. Sorry, a bit of a downer episode, I know. But if you caught this episode on the YouTube channel and haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, and turn on those notifications. Or if you catch up with this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with episode 147 real soon. Until then, peace.